Hey, I think that is our cue to get the webinar started. I was thinking by myself, this is not exactly like launching a space shuttle, so there's a little bit of leeway in terms of time and being like super prompt. So let me just welcome everyone here today. We are now entering the festive season, and we know the diaries are still full. But we welcome you here today for taking the time to have a bit of I almost want to say a campfire conversation. But first, just a little bit of background, where we come from. This is the fourth webinar in our energy transition series. We started it at the beginning of the year in 2022, and today, 4 episodes later. The series of webinars actually included starting off with an episode focused on smart manufacturing and the opportunities that lies within special economic zones. We then zoomed into the energy transition and unpacked the opportunities for Saldanha Bay as a green hydrogen hub. And then we took a helicopter view and a market scan of energy transition opportunities, much broader in Southern Africa, as well as some of the social and environmental impacts of the energy transition. Now, today's topic of discussion will be to focus on how we can accelerate proudly South African clean technology innovations and bring these solutions to market in time for the accelerated energy transition. Now, you may be wondering, why do we have these webinar series? And there are so many throughout the year from various organizations. For us as an innovation campus and an innovation cluster dedicated to energy and maritime, this is a way for us to create awareness on different topics relating to the just energy transition. Something that impacts everyone's livelihoods on a day-to-day basis, but also our futures. It is also to help people to have more informed debates, discussions, and decision-making when it comes to the just energy transition. May it be around boardroom tables or when we around a Bray and our friends and family ask questions about, but what is this actually? Then, really true to the core of the Innovation Campus, and I think certainly in the spirit of Team South Africa, we're very keen to build partnerships with others who share similar interests so that we can leverage synergies to ensure that this green transition is indeed just and effective. If you have missed any of the previous webinars, don't worry, you can watch this, also all of the recordings on YouTube, and this episode will also be uploaded to our channel. Now, a few housekeeping rules before we begin. Firstly, it is time to tune in. Everyone will be muted for the duration of the session. Then I encourage everyone to be curious and to engage, ask all of the questions that you have. Our panelists will try their very best to answer. And if we're not able to get through all of the questions, we will also reach out to you via email. And during the Q&A session, if you have a specific question for someone, you can certainly do so. And we will also allow for, I would say, live questions if somebody would like to also ask it, and we'll allow you to unmute. Now, we really try for our webinars to be interactive. So to warm us up, we're going to launch our first poll, and we'll give you a few moments to respond, and you'll see it pop up on the screen right now. So let's maybe give it like 15 or 20 moments for everyone to answer, and then we'll get going. Okay, I'm seeing lots of action happening. If you want to follow us on YouTube, we've just shared the link. As the Saldanha Bay Innovation Campus, we're also quite active on LinkedIn, as well as our partner organizations with Reese and Freeport Saldanha. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so housekeeping behind us, and you will be able to see also the results of the poll. Okay, so let me start with a round of introductions. My name is Adinda. I represent Freeport, Saldanha. I wear many hats and I would say wear many shoes, but for today I have my Innovation Campus outfit on. A small note and apologies. I am standing in for Gijsbert from the Club of Engineers today as host and moderator. He unfortunately were not able to join today's webinar. He's been called into some important meetings as he is the project manager for the Cape Oceans Terminals, which is a greenfield storage terminal project in South Africa, specifically in Saldanha. But we are definitely going to take him up on being a host and a moderator for one of our webinars in the new year. So on to our panelists. On our panel today, I want to say our pioneers and innovators, colleagues, partners and friends of the Innovation Campus. And with all of them in the room, we've done lots of collaboration and work this year, and I'm already looking forward to what we have planned in 2023. Now, each of our panelists bring their own superpower and perspective to the innovation ecosystem in South Africa and to the discussion that we have today. First up that I would like to introduce is Audrey Verhaeghe. Now, Audrey serves on various boards where innovation, tech startup investment, and entrepreneurship play an important role. She has co-founded the Research Institute for Innovation and Sustainability, RISE, the South African Innovation Summit, and very recently, Anza Capital, and she is an active angel investor. Thanks, Audrey. Then on to Edmund Nala. Now, Edmund is a project lead working on low carbon energy solution development projects at Sasol. He has over 10 years of industrial research, technology, and project experience. He's currently Sasol's lead on the pre-feasibility phase for the Saldanha Green Hydrogen and Derivatives project, executed in collaboration with ArcelorMittal and Freeport Saldanha. Welcome on board, Edmund. Good to see you today. Then our third panelist is Gaylor Montmasson-Clair. And Gaylor is a senior economist for sustainable growth at Trade and Industrial Policy Strategies, or TIPS for short. He has been working on and conducting extensive research in green economy issues for more than a decade. He has recently been appointed as the facilitator for the South African Renewable Energy Master Plan, SARM, which is an industrialization plan for the renewable energy value chain to 2030. And we're very happy to have you on board today, Gaylor. And I'm sure 2023, you're not going to may have as much time, but let's hope you keep on showing up. Thank you. Then Matthew Bray. He is the co-founder of Brayfoil Technologies. Brayfoil are the developers of biomimetic design turbine blades, and a little bit later, Matthew will explain exactly what that means. Brayfoil has raised over $2.3 million to develop the concept as a solution for wind energy and have been supported by global programs such as the Creative Destruction Lab, Cleantech Open, and Catapult Ocean. They recently won the Green Energy Africa Summit's Energy Investment Village Cleantech Pitching Competition in October this year. And Matthew, it's awesome to have you here and continue the journey with the Energy Investment Village. It's good to see you. Then last, Senisha Moonsamy. So Senisha joins us from TIA. She is currently the head of Innovation Skills Development and Enterprise Development Support, and also heads up the Global Cleantech Innovation Program in South Africa. She is an expert in learnerships and the structuring of high impact accelerator programs. Now, having the opportunity to have worked with Senisha and all of the panelists, I almost say you cannot get a more energized and passionate crowd about the topic of clean tech startups in the context of South Africa. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we're all looking eager, very eager to hear the insights that you'll be sharing. Now, I'm going to set the scene just very shortly. Usually we have a keynote speaker, but we decided today just to keep to a format of a campfire conversation and really try to, I would say, close up the year of 2023 of where have we left off, or what have we done on clean tech startups, and what do we need to do in 2023 to grow this. So to set the scene, to reach the 2050 climate goals and to decarbonize our industries, we will require breakthroughs and technological frontiers for energy generation, storage, production, transport, and consumption. There certainly is a global race for cleaner, more efficient, and smarter energy. Now, exciting things are happening all around and all the time. Yesterday, I was reading some of the headline news, and out of America, there's an announcement, a breakthrough discovery in nuclear fusion, which is deemed as the milestone for the future of clean energy. So out of all corners of the world, clean energy is definitely relevant. Now, more specifically, why we're having this conversation today is that as Team South Africa, we have a lot to offer in terms of clean technology expertise. The questions that I sit with is, how do we nurture ideas to become startups? How do we grow startups to become commercial? And then how do we scale these businesses to become the next generation of industrial companies, manufacturers, service providers, contractors, all on homegrown South Africa? So to kick us off, Gaylor, I would love if you can help explain where we are as South Africa. If 22 was the word cloud, the word just energy transition would certainly be trending in the South African context. And we end the year on a relative high. We had COP27 in November at Sharm el-Sheikh, and South Africa shared its Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, which I relatively got everyone quite excited. So Gaylor, can you share more with our listeners today? What is the Just Energy Transition Plan, investment plan? Why is it relevant? Which industries are being prioritized? And where do you see the opportunities for South African startups? Over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here today. As you said, we are certainly, as South Africa, a front runner when it comes to issues of the just transition, and particularly just energy transition. And there's a number of processes that have been unfolding. Last year, we developed the just transition framework for the country that was supported by the Presidential Climate Commission and now adopted by Cabinet, and that provides kind of the overarching framework for South Africa's just transition overall. In parallel to that, announced now a year ago, in Glasgow, was a strategic partnership between South Africa and a number of countries, specifically the UK, France, Germany, the US, and the European Union, to support South Africa's just transition, specifically in the energy sector. Of course, we acknowledge that the just transition is a bigger, broader topic around an economy-wide and society-wide transition, but energy is core to that. And this country pledged to support South Africa to the tune of $8.5 billion over the next 5 years. But that triggered some really interesting discussions, because instead of going and say, well, let's go and design a plan on how to spend those $8.5 billion over the next 5 years. Government went ahead and said, no, we need a more comprehensive plan. We have to acknowledge that, of course, the 8.5 billion is a large number, but, in the grand scheme of things is quite little. And we need a much bigger plan. And that led to the Just Energy Transition investment plan, which was presented just ahead of COP27 and is now, a significant blueprint, not for the entire South Africa's just transition, but certainly for the transition in 3 key sectors: electricity, new energy vehicles, or as we know them as well, electric vehicles, and green hydrogen. And that plan, it sets the scene on how much money we need as a country to transition effectively in those 3 sectors. The estimates for the next 5 years, it's 1.5 trillion rand. That's a large number. Okay, that's how much money we need. About 2/3 of that for infrastructure. All right, and then the rest for other activities. If you look at the plan, you see that the bulk of that is to go to the electricity sector, particularly on infrastructure for solar and wind technologies, but also batteries, and of course the development of the grid, both from a transmission and a distribution perspective. So it's really focused, not particularly a surprise given the challenges that we face and the scale of the opportunities that appear for renewable energy, that energy is at the core of that and electricity is at the core of that. Interestingly, of course, from a Saldanha perspective, green hydrogen is also a big anchor, including green steel being included in the investment plan. And of course, we know the opportunity here. So that's really the extent of the plan here at the moment. The question that hasn't been fully answered is how are we going to find the money for that plan? 1.5 trillion rand. We have $8.5 million, so that's about 8% of that. That's coming from our partners. There's some further funding already allocated from some other partners, multilateral development banks, the private sector also going to contribute about 1/3 of that funding. But we still have about half that's unallocated, also to say unfunded, of course. So a lot of work still to be done to find the funding, but that's really going to create some interesting momentum around the areas that have been identified by the implementation plan. Of course, I reiterate, it's not the blueprint for the whole country, for the whole transition, but certainly it's going to drive interventions in electricity, in green hydrogen, and in new energy vehicles. And here, I think there's a massive opportunity, of course, for new entrants to seize and to tap into those opportunities, because the plan looks at feasibility studies, feasibility studies, infrastructure, support to communities, support to enterprises. It's quite widespread. So lots of opportunities to engage with that. I'm happy to get into more detail in the discussion going forward as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Gaylor. So I'm going to extrapolate a little bit what you have described around the just energy transition, and just remind everyone, it's not only South Africa going through the energy transition, but the world. And it's the world that needs to rethink capital allocation to promote cleaner energy. So we're certainly at a very interesting space as South Africa, but also as a planet. Now, why I mention this, because I want to start zooming in clean technology adoption and clean technology startups. And we actually at quite a special place where I almost want to say we're at an equal playing foot when it comes to the rest of the world and thinking of new clean tech innovations. The race is open. Capital will be and can be deployed where there is value to be made or value to be seen. So that is actually quite encouraging for our tech startups and for our bigger innovation community in South Africa, is that if there was ever a time to put yourself out there, it certainly is now. And for our audience, I actually want to just replay a little bit to our energy investment village. Gaylor mentioned 3 priority areas: electricity, new electrical vehicles, as well as green hydrogen. At our energy investment village in October, we had Brayfoil technologies showcasing wind blade efficiency. We had Zimmy Charge, that is a platform to charge electrical vehicles. And then on the green hydrogen space, all sorts of interesting tech projects, from wave energy to vessels, using vessels to generate hydrogen with kites. So there is some really cool stuff happening. So I'm making a nice segue to you, Matthew, and you are a clean tech startup. Can you explain to us a little bit more about Brayfoil Technologies, how you are leading innovation in the renewable space, and what made you start this company? Thanks.
Sure. Thanks so much, Adinda. And thanks for having me as well. I think leading on from the way that Gaylor started, looking at the overall macro space in the transition and in energy in particular, things are scaling and things are changing. It's just they're not changing fast enough. And you know, we need to, even in wind power, for example, we're not nearly on pace to keep to the amount of wind power that needs to be deployed in order to reach our 1.5 or even 2 degrees C warming targets. So one side of it is about scale, so taking solutions that are existing and that work at the moment and getting them to be more widely adopted. And that's a lot about funding mechanisms, supply chains, and a lot of the work that you guys are doing at the Innovation Campus. But there's also a space for innovation there. And so what we do is we work on providing an enabling technology to be able to improve a certain industry. So for example, we work in wind, but there's good scope for that in all renewable energies, as well as developing new tech like fusion, etc. So for us as a business, we started off in 2017-18. We started as the brainchild of my late father, hence the company is named after him. He designed a aerofoil technology, so basically a wind technology that could change shape in operation in a very simple, commercially viable way in order to reduce loadings or change loadings on a blade or on a wing in operation. That's something that hadn't been able to be done in the aerospace industry at that point. We then raised about $1 million from TIA in 2019, 2020 on the back of a prototype we tested at the CSIR. And since then, it's about scaling those blades up and getting them working in a pilot operation scenario. And the real intention for our technology is not to make more efficient turbine blades, it's really to decrease what they call excess loadings. So loadings in storm situations in an operational loading is quite technical, so I won't go into detail, but basically to make turbines better, to be able to enable longer blades, to be able to get over the tremendous forces that are created in very, very long turbine blades. And we're at the stage now where we've built blades up to about 8 meters long. We are putting up our first pilot turbine in Stellenbosch with the help of the University of Stellenbosch. And really the goal is to be an enabling technology to improve the output of turbines. So something that's scalable and can be incorporated into turbines at the design phase, both for onshore and offshore devices. And the real goal there is to improve the amount of greenhouse gases being mitigated by electricity production. So if we can increase the performance of a turbine by 15-20%, that means that electricity doesn't have to be made elsewhere. So yeah, that's our origin story, and we are excited to see other people, as you've mentioned, in the space creating great innovation locally.
Thanks, Matthew. And I'm sure that is just really the tip of the iceberg in terms of your founder story, like an awesome summary. But I think one of the things that stands out is partnerships along the way. And I'm going to park that for a little bit later. But the one that I want to zoom into for now is the partnership or the role of government in assisting innovation startups. And you've mentioned that TIA has been has played a significant role in the success or in the journey of Brayfoil this far. So Senisha, I would love to hear from you a little bit more on how organizations like TIA are catalysts for startups like Brayfoil to commercialize and to take them through the various phases of innovation. Over to you.
Thank you so much for that question. So I think, TIA as a government agency supporting technology development under the Department of Science and Innovation, we really play a huge role in terms of what the DSI has put in place with regards to the decadal plan. And by that, I mean, there's two key things that we look at. And the first thing is we really leverage off the circular economy, which is very, very key. And also looking at the most strategic initiatives in clean technologies. And the second thing that's very, very key in the decadal plan is the energy sector innovation in support of decarbonizing the economy. So TIA support through the DSI, we've implemented an energy sector, which really manages and looks at how we can improve on our renewable energy sector, as well as looking at other key sectors like transportation, like you've mentioned, as well as the hydrogen economy. And for me, that is key. I think TIA has recently collaborated significantly with the South African National Energy Development Institute, where they're playing a secretariat role. The TIA unit, like we said, we very much focus on any technology and innovation from a technology readiness level 3 and above, which for us is very key because we don't play in the space of basic and applied research, but rather focusing on what are some of the key innovative technologies that have been developed by SMMEs as well as other sector partners, primarily focusing on your higher education institutes as well as science councils, looking at how we can commercialize those opportunities. So that has been our critical role. And I think, as Matthew said, from Brayfoil, he's one of our renewable energy solutions that have been implemented. And it is about scale. How do we look at scaling up his opportunity so that it not only can reach greater parts of South Africa, but the continent and globally? Another key important program that was launched by TIA and the United Nations a few years ago in 2011, we launched the Global Cleantech Innovation Program, which I currently head up in South Africa. And like I said, through that process, there's been in excess of 3,000 startups across 8 partner countries that have benefited from this cleantech program. The cleantech program primarily focuses on an accelerated program, really looking at giving them serious mentorship, a business element that focuses on business development, as well as looking at climate change and how we can look at scaling up those opportunities. So that program has been relaunched this year at COP27, and I must say with a very strong focus on taking care of what has not been looked at before. So when it looks at policies and regulations, they're looking at that very strongly. They're also looking at a very clear focus on a pre-accelerator program as well as a post-acceleration program. And by that we mean, for example, if you look at Brayfoil's solution, how can they give follow-on support and funding through other mechanisms like the P Fund, Climate Fund, as well as the Green Fund that has been put in place. So key component is really looking at how can we scale these opportunities, but also how can we look at inbound solutions. So where there's really strong inbound solutions, these solutions then would be used in other countries, obviously, to look at mitigating the risk of climate change. So that's just a bit on the government side, what's currently happening in this space.
So thank you, Senisha. My mind is abuzz with questions, but I'm going to put them soundly in the parking lot until we have perhaps a little bit of time later. But I think from what you've spoken to is around the support that public sector gives, making funding available, but it is crucial to highlight that you're perhaps one leg of the chair assisting startups, and that you work closely also with private capital, with angel capital, venture capitalists, and other financiers. And this is where I want to ask Audrey your perspective in terms of the funding support for startups. And can you also share like a little bit more about Anza Capital's investment in clean tech energy, your strategy, and also Senisha did mention to the different stages of investment. If you can also just share a little bit for our audience, the mention of TRL level 3, 4, 5. Yeah, a short summary of that would be wonderful.
Okay, I'm going to try my best. First of all, I want to position what's happening in the economy at the moment. Anza Capital is an emerging fund. There are many emerging funds in South Africa and across Africa. I'm part of a group of 330 emerging fund managers. Some of them are also ones that have now completed 3 fund cycles. So you are an emerging fund manager up until the 3rd fund that you've opened and closed. Then you are an experienced fund manager. There's almost none of them on the continent for venture capital. So even the oldest one that all of us know, Knife Capital, has just finished raising their 3rd fund. So can you hear how young this space is? And how few entries are actually active in this space. So Anza Capital is a new kid on the block, and where Knife Capital has done Series A and B and upwards, we enter the space from seed to Series A. At the moment, we've got a Department of Science and Innovation mandate that allows us to go pre-commercial as well. So I just want to answer, Adinda, your question about technology readiness. Now, TIA plays in very early stage, so they often partner with universities, and that is in a research space where the technology is still on a research level. So we call that space TRL 1 to 3, and I'm not completely sure, Senisha can maybe illuminate it a little bit more. How do you then define TRL? This is technology readiness level of something that comes from a university, but that can also be coming from a kitchen or a garage. We must never forget that. TIA looks at all of these as well. Then you've got something that is starting to look like there's maybe potential in the market. And then you get TRL level 7, 8, and 9, and that is these technologies are proven and they are almost ready to hit the market. They might still need a minimum viable product or some pilots, or they might even need a product market fit. And that is TRL 7 to 9. So a venture capital firm like Anza Capital will not touch anything earlier than TRL 7, 8, and 9. And there are very important things that we want. We want a champion. So a university is not a champion. We do not want it to be in a university. It has to be spun out of a university. It has to have a PTY LTD structure, not a not-for-profit. That's a different way of funding. There's place for not-for-profits, but obviously they work on sponsorship and grants and other kinds of funders, not a venture capital. A venture capital firm don't fund there. So we want a vehicle, we want a champion. Then who's this champion? The champion has to be a founder, a person with a vision that is absolutely on mission. The more experienced, the better, because your money is safer like that. So I want to say that, and then Anza Capital comes in. So although we go a little bit early stage, at that stage we want lots of intellectual property. So if you are a cool intellectual property driven startup that hasn't hit the market, that's something we will look at. But if you are just a startup and you haven't hit the market and you're still building your intellectual property and you can't value it, we won't touch that company. We will touch you if you don't have intellectual property and you're in the market, and we can help you build intellectual property. So we look at two things: IP that can be commercialized, or a good commercial lead that needs IP. So you see, we've got 2 entry points. And the last thing I want to say about this space is that there's a missing middle. Why you are finding so many emerging fund managers at the moment is there was a complete collapse across Africa, including South Africa, in the early stage. There isn't critical masses of money. There isn't enough private sector money that takes on TIA's work in the early stages. There was just a big collapse from pre-seed to Series A. We had virtually 1 or 2 players in Series A. And then what happens then? How do you take these companies forward? So what happened is international money funded those companies, but it was hard because you have to look at foreign exchange. How do you show returns? A lot of people don't trust African founders. So there was a lot of bridges that needed to be built, but that's how local companies actually raised money. But there's a change now. The pension fund codes are changing from the 3rd of January, and they can even start to invest maybe in funds like ours, but also in tech startups, and they could not touch this space until this regulation has been changed. So it's a changing space, it's exciting, and I think you will see how Africa now develops in all technology fields, but obviously the just energy space is a hot topic, and our fund has 1 leg in just energy. So I hope that gives an overview.
Awesome, Audrey. And I want to say your passion and energy and the vision of Anza is also tangible when you speak. What you do remind me is that there's a changing space now where more capital may become available for startups, but I'm mindful this is a supply-demand balance. We get more capital, but we're actually also going to need more startups because it is a funnel really to get companies from sort of nurturing them to Series A stage. So I want to ask Senisha, and it's a little bit additional, asking, do we have enough startups? How do we go about encouraging more startups, ideas to be nurtured and grown, and what role does TIA play in it? And I know there's certain eligibility criteria that you look for in a startup, but if you can maybe just expand on the startup part of the equation. What are we doing to nurture them, specifically with your TIA hat?
Thank you so much. So I think for me, I'm going to put on my Global Cleantech Innovation Program hat. And I think that was my initial engagement with the Saldanha Bay IDZ Innovation Campus, because I saw you guys as a critical partner in a province. So what has happened from where we started to now, we're looking at, we have realized that early stage and pre-acceleration is needed at a regional level. So by that being said, the UNIDO program has put in funding for us to do a pre-accelerator program in provinces that were previously marginalized. So very much focusing on creating hubs in provinces like Limpopo, Mpumalanga, the Northern Cape, as well as looking at how we can scale that opportunity. So from those regional hubs, we will then capacitate startups in the field, obviously, of climate change projects and clean tech innovations coming out. And then from that, they will then be able to attend then the main accelerator program. So as you can see, you're growing and nurturing then more young startups in provinces that previously never participated to get them into this national program. And once they're in the national program, they will then be supported through, like I said, the program, as well as funding opportunities and our technology stations. So in terms of TIA playing a strong role, we're hoping that we can close the loop with the Connect partners, looking at, for example, working very closely with the DTIC, working with the IDC and other funding partners. Recently, at COP27, we really looked at how we're going to strengthen our relationship with industry participation. So I'm very happy to see that Sasol's on board because they have become part of our program going forward. In fact, they participated in the judging just last week, looking at what are the scalable opportunities and how can we take it forward. So definitely from a government point of view, we cannot do it alone, like you've just said. The industry participation is very strong. We're also working very closely with the JSE, the Joburg Stock Exchange, to see they also have a fund in terms of green solutions coming out. So in terms of us having more sustainable startups in the clean tech space, it cannot be done without industry participation. And I think that's very clear for us, growing it day by day and looking at which other partners could possibly come through. But 100% in terms of our own South African ecosystem, we are looking at how we can strengthen the ecosystem by the role players then coming together across South Africa for, like I said, more startups to be sustainable going forward.
Great, Senisha. That actually introduces Edmund and Sasol very nicely, and the role that private sector can also play in the innovation ecosystem. So Edmund, I would love to hear from you. How does Sasol work with entrepreneurs and small business, like particularly in clean energy, in order to stimulate this ecosystem? I'm just recognizing that we need big industry players as well as the small ones to come along to really unlock talent in South Africa.
Yeah, certainly, Adinda. Thank you and good afternoon. Yeah, Sasol obviously in South Africa, well-known big industry player, integrated energy company with basically over 70 years of operation and with big assets here. And at this point, obviously, we faced with the global challenge as well. We need to transition. And to do that, we need to look at the clean energy solutions, the low carbon energy solutions, green hydrogen and so forth. And to get there, we really strongly believe that partnership is really fundamental to achieving our climate ambition, the net zero, as well as, I guess, the climate ambition of the world. And we strongly believe that, as I said, society will have to play a role, and then we want to collaborate with both sort of large players as well as small players, and I think startups and new players that are going to come up with ideas are definitely going to be have a role to play as we transition. So if you look at Sasol, making sure that you bring in the small players, we at the Sasol have our ESD or Enterprise Supply Development Programs, which is quite well established, where we provide a platform for already established and the new SMEs to connect businesses with Sasol, as well as to connect them with other thought leaders and other entrepreneurs to stimulate, I think, conversation with other industry experts. So we've got initiatives that basically run this. And this allows us to be able to say we're taking actionable steps towards providing visibility and promoting the inclusion of small business in this low carbon space. And that's really just saying to support the businesses of the future. I think if I remember correctly, last month in late November, our ESD department, they had ran an SME Sustainability Summit where we're looking at our fence line communities around Secunda and working to capacitate these small players for the low carbon economic participation in the future, providing that platform to start sharing knowledge and networking opportunities to make sure that they are included in the future. So if you look at that summit and you look at all the other initiatives that we basically participating or running, we just try and make sure that they are aligned, I guess, with the South African National Development Plan, as well as, I guess, you look at the United Nations Sustainability Development Plan. And Innovation Day is obviously going to be key key enabler to attracting, I think, customers and the different small businesses. So you need all those new ideas coming in, those new technologies coming in, and we just need to provide that platform that there could be an outlet for those players into the transition into our processes from upstream to downstream processes within Sasol. So yeah, I think Sasol is committed to, I guess, obviously a just transition, and we want to bring everybody along, and with our ESG models and programs and initiatives, we definitely want to ensure that we foster the local economic growth, especially in the new space, in the new low carbon space, and then continue to provide job creation and establish new renewable enterprises.
Thanks, Edmund. Like, my mind is connecting dots, and one of the things that, and I'm completely paraphrasing, but maybe a sounding board for the conversation up until now, I'm hearing the word partnerships, I'm hearing about collaboration, but actually more importantly, starting at home in our communities. And if I use the example, here we have Saldanha and Secunda, and we are connected by our networks. And maybe also to share that with the audience is not to underestimate, one, starting at home, but through our networks, we are connected and we can move together. And if I look around the room, there we have Senisha on a national level, Audrey that plays on a Pan-African level, that network, Gaylor, which brings a whole different perspective on the just energy transition and his network, and then Matthew connected via the innovation R&D space. So yeah, it's how amazing, and we certainly need to leverage partnerships and collaboration going forward. In the work that I do, especially in business development, when we talk about the energy transition, there's a lot of question around how do we execute? And it comes down to partnerships and collaboration and integration like never before. And that's going to be a mind shift for us. Audrey, I'm quite keen just to hear from your side if there's anything more that you want to share around the role of partnerships and funding in the South African context. Over to you.
Thank you. Yes, I like that you said it's going to take a mind shift. You know, when we spoke about ecosystem building 10 years ago, if you're a speaker at a summit, whatever summit, then you were guaranteed that there was no one in your session. These days, when you talk about ecosystem building, you've got a full session. So I think the mind has already shifted, or community has already shifted, that people realize it's never a one-man show, not even in government departments. You know, there's an overlap between what the DTI does and what the DSI do in the early stage of innovation and the commercialization of innovation. We had very weird little brackets to say you start here and I start there, and there's no in-between space, which is so unhealthy. So that's definitely, the walls are breaking down. I would say that it's very self-regulated at the moment. You know, if you think of a venture capital value chain, it's up to your phase to collaborate with earlier stage funders because you want the front runners from them. And then you must build another space where you can hand over your investments to the Series B players in our case. So we are signing MOUs actively in our fund so that we can catch and give over, and that will only solve one part of it. And I think that is very important that all players think about it. Sasol mentioned that they work with enterprise development. and that's their space of influencing. And I think the corporate, government, startup conversation needs much more intentionality to actually say, let's, as a country, fix this, not just maybe complying to certain codes and things, that we show that we actually want to make a difference. And I'm not saying Sasol, I don't even know what Sasol does in this space, but there's a lot of corporates that just comply and they don't try and actually move the needle. You know, how do we move the needle in just energy transition? For that, there must be huge intentionality. If I think about TIA and the early stage venture capital space and the angel investor space, how intentional are we in the just energy space to say, what you invest in, can I take it over? So in our MOUs to Series B, I must actually go and ask the Series B investors, how does that company look like that you'll invest in, so that when I add my value in my seed stage, that I can actually hand over a company that they're willing to invest in. Can you see how it changes? It's not just me, it's now actually, how do I hand over and how do I collect? And what are your requirements, what are mine, and what's yours, so that the value chain makes sense. That's partnership. Corporates, you know, what are you looking for? What would you buy from the market? And should you go a little bit earlier? Should you start a funds of funds that really moves the dial there, and not just replicate incubation services that Saldanha Bay could do, or the Innovation Hub in Pretoria could do? What about being a fund of funds that actually instigate more money into the space and a value chain? So I think there's definitely, in the just energy space, there's more collective coordination that could really benefit all the players, because we all do it in our space. And if you don't, I think you're missing a beat for the country and for what is possible if we stand together. So the DSI, for instance, now started putting money into various organizations, not just for green energy, but for early stage tech. And the sole purpose is to attract more private sector money. So for instance, when we put our money into a company, I must prove that my money attracted more private sector money. 6 times, you know. So if I put 2 million, can I prove that other players put in 12 million? You know, can you see now you're shifting the dial. Now you're instigating, you're attracting match on match. And that type of thinking takes collaboration. It takes intentionality. It takes a collective to change. I'm just thinking value change, corporations. Yes, I spoke. We can talk about accelerations, but those are other things that we can talk on.
Awesome, Audrey. Like I think you've unpacked the collaboration, connectedness, but it's also, I think, an important thought there is we also need to think of the value chain. It's more than just startups. Everyone's got a role to play. We actually have we need to rethink funding mechanisms. We need to rethink the support mechanisms for startups. So there's actually also innovation required in that. And I really like that thought, because I want to go back to Gaylor, and I actually want to talk about climate smart investment risks. But before I ask my question, maybe just a little bit of, you know, background and where my thinking is, just listening to all of you, and it's very rich content. I think from where I'm sitting, and if I reflect on the year, or at least 2 years of being quite buckled into the energy transition and following the language. We started off 2020, 21, and we were kind of looking externally facing, looking at the different continents, how they are doing it. But what for me is emerging this year, 2022, is a much stronger, I want to say, African-centric approach to tackling the just energy transition, and not just adopting standard ways of doing things, and recognizing what may have worked in another location may not actually work in South Africa, Southern Africa, or the broader Africa. We need to think differently. And also it's an opportunity to think differently than where we have come from. So Gaylor, like just really zooming out a bit, thinking about the African continent, and that investments into startups does present a variety of different risk factors. I'm thinking to your expertise now in a renewable energy project. It presents different regulatory, capital market risk, technology risk. What is your sense of how do we share risk, or what is a different approach that we can take, tops up, bottoms up, tops down, bottoms up, as you wish? Like what's your take on risk sharing in Southern Africa and Africa?
Yeah, I think, I think Audrey put a finger on it, and really she was very clear about the need to break the barriers and break the silos, and effectively break away from this famous or infamous, I don't know, valley of death, of moving technologies from R&D and innovation all the way to being market ready, and that commercialization challenge that we've struggled for so long in South Africa actually to try and address. And I think the reality is that of course we're not very much aware of the challenges that we face, and there's been some really great interventions to try and address that. And I think we need to be quite specific in what we're trying to achieve. And if I put my new hat now from SAREM and look at some of the things that certainly SAREM is trying to achieve, is to build industrial value chains, including everyone, the big guys, the small guys, and the new guys, into those value chains. And certainly, we have some work streams around supporting the entry of new players around various technologies, but it's really across the value chain. And I think that really forces us to then look at the financial model and then the kind of supports that can be provided to new entrants through maybe blended finance, but also looking at the mentorship and how we bring in small businesses into those value chains, be it solar, wind, also batteries. How we kind of look at getting a track record. Renewable energy industry is quite famous, particularly in solar, to say, well, we only deal with tier 1 manufacturers, no one else. If you don't have a track record, how are you supposed to get to tier 1 if you're not tier 1 to begin with? There's no actually pipeline to you becoming tier 1 at all. It's virtually impossible. So can we build something maybe with warranties and guarantees and different kind of market segment, so that you can eventually become tier 1 or operate in a different market? It's obviously the be all and end all at the end of the day, but that's certainly important. And so we're quite keen to find ways, and you talk about partnership, and I think that's so critical, to find partnerships to build a bit of a pipeline, kind of a pathways for entrepreneurs and small businesses to enter the space, that they come out of universities, that they come out of small businesses, that they come out of their garage, or that they come from the big guys. It doesn't matter, really looking at everyone else. And the idea of the master plan is that it's not government or me as a facilitator that go into my little corner, design something, and then I come up and then people magically would agree or not with me. It has to be co-developed between government, industry, labor, and civil society at large. And that's really the work that's been done so far already for quite some time. And now we're taking it to like second gear effectively, and we want to really take it over the line. So everyone, I think, is welcome to contribute, and I think that's really the power of it. We are here to listen, to take in, so that we can design solutions together that work for the people who work in the industry. And I think there's massive opportunity. I mean, if we don't tap the opportunities in solar, wind, and batteries, you know, really, I mean, in what sectors are we going to tap the opportunities? You know, really, it's like this really a great place to start, because then it also underpins anything around green hydrogen, and of course, the new energy vehicle and so many other sectors. So there's very much an awareness around the challenges and a willingness to engage. We already have some ideas in the pipeline on how we can do that in terms of building some of the skills and really trying to buy a pipeline. But we're still obviously in the thinking stage, and I think really I welcome you know, everyone to contribute and reach out to design the solutions together.
Awesome. Thanks, Gaylor. I take a sense of been in many engagements over the past few weeks, but a sense of we actually need to plant seeds today for the trees in the future, meaning we need to start building, taking ideas to startups that in 30 years from now, we will have new industrialists. And I see that from an IDZ perspective, from a business development desk, there just isn't enough big industrial projects. And there also isn't a big enough, or there isn't a support system. And that is actually also where we as the Saldanha Bay Innovation Campus, this is one of our intentions that we set, is that by being involved in these acceleration programs, we are starting, yes, with SMEs and startups, but we also, like, we want to grow the pipeline of the future, of future industrialists. So awesome. Thank you for that. Audrey, I want to give you just 1 minute. Just want to quickly ask, like, we've spoken a lot about capital, about financing for tech startups. Just from your perspective, like, what do investors look for? Like, if you're looking at a project, you quickly, you mentioned it earlier, it's either great IP or commercial lead. But just for our audience, what are some of the things that they should think about that is critical? Over to you.
Okay, so investors typically like diverse teams. They like that their money goes in and can come out, so exit plan. They like that that you've got a competitive edge. They like a experienced team, but if it's not available, you know, how are you building your team? And obviously a multiple. So they put your money in now, in 5 years, how will it look like? So do you also think like that? If you can answer these things, that's what investors look for, whether they are grant, impact, or venture capital. In some way, it might vary 10 times, 3 times, doesn't matter. So know who you're talking to and what they're looking for. They also need to report their KPIs. So are you saving money? Are you doing carbon credits? What influence? Who are accessing your services? So those reporting points, investors also look for.
Thanks, Audrey. That has the sound of a masterclass to it. And I will certainly also capture that when we send out the recording. Matthew, you've listened to all of this now, and I'm super keen just to get your experience. Like, there's a lot of challenges and there's a lot of opportunities, like our panelists have spoken to. Just to the Brayfoil technologies journey, like, where do you see any other gaps? And also, perhaps, what has been fundamental to accelerate your company? Maybe something that may have not yet been mentioned. Up to you. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah, good question. I think that the experience of startups in the space that are trying to actually build clean tech solutions is a difficult one, especially in emerging markets. I think that there's a perception shift that needs to happen when looking at clean tech startups in particular, because, you know, we're used to the startup stories of the 2000s when, you know, it's very digitally based, it's very, you know, rapid scale. Whereas, carbon is a molecule. Most of the things that we're doing to remove it is physical hardware and technology. And sure, there are digital solutions that can go around that, but you can't blockchain away the nature of carbon emissions. And so that requires a very different approach from investors and from market participants to understand that these things take a bit longer, they're more expensive. Scaling is a far more capex intensive process. And so from that perspective, it is a higher risk area to invest. And finding funding that fit that mandate and that has the appetite to invest there is quite difficult. So I think from our perspective, funding has been a tremendous driver of our business, but it's also been a massive challenge for us, both in terms of the scale of funding, so the amount of funding required, and also the speed of funding. I think, as much as we are working hard on partnerships, we still have a long way to go to match sort of the US and Europe's ability to deploy capital quickly from research through to commercialization. But outside of that, our partnerships are very important, and it's slightly different partnerships to what everyone talked about so far. It's really about a marketplace for judgment. So there is not a massive history of success of these types of businesses in Africa and in a lot of places in the world. So getting access to entrepreneurs who've done this type of work and have succeeded. It's almost why Silicon Valley is so successful in businesses which are internet-based and marketing-based, is because they have this lovely feedback loop between people that are successful in businesses who then invest in businesses who can advise them. So that marketplace for judgment doesn't necessarily exist in smaller markets and in more nascent markets like ours. So our main priority there has been tapping into international networks as much as we can to get that feedback and get that input. So things like Cleantech Open in the US, we did a 2021, Creative Destruction Lab it comes out of Canada, but it's a global program, also focused on connecting entrepreneurs with mentors that have been successful in space. And then getting investment from Catapult Ocean in Norway has been very helpful for us. All of those have put us in touch with networks who have told us, to do things differently and to really move forward in a way that we wouldn't have known how to do otherwise. And the last thing to touch on really would be skilled labor in the space has been quite hard to find. So depending on what you're doing, this can be very different. So for us, because we're working in composites and blade design, it has been a real challenge to find effective and skilled labor at a cost-effective amount in South Africa. But all of those things come together to create a very different picture for investment in clean tech and for the idea of scaling a clean tech startup in South Africa. So hopefully that's a helpful perspective.
It certainly is, Matthew. And I know for the new year, we actually have a podcast planned with you to actually just also unpack a little bit more about your journey and some of those gems that you shared. I really love what you said around feedback loops and mentors, and also I think a sense of paying it forward. So I'm jotting that down for the cheat sheet. Okay, then I want to crisscross over to Edmund, Sasol, and through your lens. Just also lots of discussion, lots of thoughts. How do you see Sasol playing a role in the journey of a company such as Brayfoil? What sort of support do you think Sasol can bring, and or maybe not support, but how can companies like Brayfoil help Sasol to reduce the environmental impact of the energy sector? I think it's quite a broad question, so you're also welcome to take bits that stick and leave the ones you don't.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as I said, obviously, us transitioning to and achieving our climate ambition, definitely we're going to need a lot of different technologies across the value chain, and I think everybody will have a part to play. Some way. So what we position ourselves, and you've seen, we've announced a project, we're trying to get to that point where we champion some of the big projects that are coming through, example, in the green hydrogen space, because we need that green hydrogen that involves a lot of renewables, it involves maybe battery storage, it involves quite a lot of different technologies. So in that regard, first thing first, we aim to provide, I think, an anchor demand of different technologies, and then we obviously evaluate different partnerships. And as I said, strong localization as well is key for us. So once we've created that anchor demand, and certainly through, as you would have seen recently, we already continuously going through, for example, public participation. I think we recently had issued an RFI on the renewables, and that encourages any company to come now and participate in that, whether the small companies, and we're going to continuously do that in different areas as we progress our project. And that being said, we also look at, I think we've done a lot of work in terms of supporting, we've got a research and development facilities. And if you look at some of the small initiatives, DSI, NRF, where we support, I think we do believe that obviously the skills is going to be key. So we are already helping to try and upskill quite a lot of people to participate. But I think what's going to be key is really to align the necessary skills and what technology is being developed, as I think Matthew was saying, that obviously they become a lack of some of the skills. And I think with Sasol, we do go out there and try and look at the different key focus areas that will support our ambition, and we enable some of the areas in the universities get some skills in those areas. That will also enable to support some of the startups to get good skilled resources that can be able to facilitate and help those companies not to go out overseas to get some specialized skills. So I think it's attacking in different angles. You have to go through quite a vast different areas, as I said. Skills, you've got creating the anchor demand and making sure that technologies, or there's an outlet of these technologies, there's an outlet for these startups to provide, and as we issue the public participation, they can be able to participate there as well, and through our RFIs. And also, I think we also welcome to, as I said, we've got an R&D, we've got a technology leg. We do engage with people. We do get to have some proposal, and then we do evaluate and see what can fit in within our sort of framework of activities that we want, or technology that we want for the future.
Thanks, Edmund. Edmund, I love what you said there around anchor demand and having actually anchor demand for outlet for technologies. And I sense it's going to be a very busy year for us in 2023, making sure that we can have an anchor demand for green hydrogen. So certainly looking forward to that, and then also working to build out the innovation ecosystem. I have a very last question, and then we're going to wrap up, and then we're going to take some questions from the audience. There's been quite a few coming in already, so this is maybe just a nudge for the audience. Please put in your questions. We're about to close that up, and then we'll tackle them. So my closing question is actually going to Matthew. Matthew, the last word is from you today. As any words of advice for a startup that is about to start or is somewhere midway in your journey, like just any lessons that you want to share, or just one gem?
Sure. Be as networked as you can in whatever ecosystem you're working in. Try and learn as much as you can from your customers, from your funders, from partners. When you do start this journey, there's often a great, lake of things that you don't know. So it's the unknown unknowns that you want to try and get a handle on as quickly as you can. And for us, partnerships and learning from an ecosystem has been a massive part of that. Apart from that, yeah, just have a great team around you. I think it's more important the people you surround yourself with than a lot of these other factors, because that team helps you actually create products of value, technology of value, and move forward. But yeah, thank you so much for having us today, and so much for the word from all of the other panelists.
Awesome. Thanks, Matthew. I echo that. I think very early on in the energy transition, we as a team also realized we don't know what we don't know. And if you start tackling things from that perspective and just being open to learning, it is actually quite a journey. And yeah, it's wonderful things to come from that. Okay, so I'm going to try my very best to route all of the questions. And I'm going to start off with a question from Marlene, and it is directed at Gaylor. The question is, energy conservation is seen as the first fuel in many international studies. Does this feature in the energy transition plan? Gaylor,
Yeah,
did
thanks.
you get that? Or?
Yes, I did. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah, I think it's a hugely important point. I mean, energy efficiency and energy conservation is and it has to be the first port of call. The best energy is the energy you don't spend often. Particularly in our context in South Africa. I mean, provided you have access to it, of course. It is in the just energy transition investment plan. If you look at it, it is included, I think, throughout as a cross-cutting feature, and for South Africa to continue improving on energy efficiency. It's actually an area where we've starting off a low base. We've done great improvement over the last 10 to 15 years, mostly driven by fast rising electricity prices. But we have increased quite significantly our efficiency. So it is included in the plan. It is something that of course needs further effort. We can still do a lot more. And I think that's something that the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, as well as the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, are working on quite heavily to make sure that we are as efficient as we can, and then that enables, of course, the transition to renewable energy and other opportunities.
Awesome, thanks, Gaylor. The next question I'm going to pose to, I think possibly to Audrey. The question goes as follows. Can we please also elaborate and differentiate among startups? Are we referring to early stage, now starting early stage, or already established traction having startups? Maybe just to check, Audrey, does that make sense, or can we perhaps
It makes sense from a certain perspective, so I'm going to take it from that perspective. What she's saying is that there's a difference between a startup and a new idea in an established company. And my quick answer to that is investors do not like the latter, because it takes change management and you cannot really see, is it this startup that's being accepted in the market? So my advice is, if you're a larger organization with a new idea, spin it out and put a champion behind it. That's for the venture capitalists. Okay, and then the other thing is, what is a startup? And that is with a new company under 7 years old. I want to go for that definition. It's not anybody who starts a company. It is a new startup that's got lots of potential for fast growth or big growth from a technology perspective. And that's the real classic definition of a startup. The others are just new companies.
Got you. Thanks, Audrey. So I've got two more questions here, and the next one I would like to ask Senisha, and the question goes as follows. How do we accelerate our innovative thoughts in the market? And I also think maybe a bit of a broad question, but, oh, you're on mute.
Thank you for the question. I think, we've been running a program called Critical Thinking Skills, and that program really allows you to think innovatively. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at what is innovative, at the end of the day, there has to be either something tangible at the end of it. So are you coming up with a product or a service or a business model or something else? So definitely innovative thinking allows one to think of solutions. So for example, if you have challenges in your community, how do you come up then and think up of a solution? So you can think up the solution first, which is always good. And then after that, you look into design thinking and you start looking at what product, process, or service would you actually need to get that done, and if it's possible.
Awesome. Thanks, Senisha. So we have one last question, and I'm going to read it out, and I'm going to try my best to answer this one. The question goes as follows. Are funders looking at innovation in technology or in business models? Meaning, how do we take technology into the market, or also a combination of the two? And if I think about what has been shared today and the points made about the value chain, it's that we definitely need to think about how do we create new technologies, how do we create new IP, but then also we need to rethink how do we fund and support that and be innovative on the business models. And also, I think that's a whole webinar on its own, looking at different business models for startups, most definitely. So thank you for that. I need to wrap us up. It's almost 2 o'clock, and I'm sure many of you may be on to a next appointment. But I want to just, close as follow. What is going to happen is there's another poll that will pop up on the screen, and the link for this webinar will also be available on YouTube, and we'll also email it as usual. Now, while the poll is underway, I would like to maybe just leave with this one very cool quote. I got it from one of the articles that Tips recently published, and actually also very contextual to where we are with the World Cup soccer final. So let me read the quote. We need to find a way that replicates the Mexican wave in a soccer match, a wave that seamlessly moves in sync and harmony across a stadium of thousands of people. A wave that is not arbitrary, that has strong leadership at its helm, that includes both the elder and the youth. I really love that, because it also makes me think, how do we achieve this Mexican wave as an ecosystem for clean startups? And how do we create it or continue this wave through the stadium? So that's the end of the poll, the end of the webinar, and also almost the end of the year. So wishing everyone a wonderful festive season, hopefully a time to relax, and then we see all of you back in 2023 on this just energy transition journey that we're on. And big thank you to our panelists for always showing up and engaging. Love it. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.